College is a wild ride for young adults, and their mental health often suffers. This podcast addresses the inner battles many college students struggle with. You're listening to Normalize It Forward, where we have raw, unfiltered conversations about young people's biggest mental health problems, how to handle them, and how to achieve a more resilient mind. Time to get rid of those heavy burdens and focus more on self-love and care. Here is your host, Mark Lehman.
Okay, welcome everybody. Today we are welcoming an extra special guest to Normalize It Forward, the podcast that talks openly about mental health and wellness. Today we are here with Stephanie Szostak, who is a French-American actress, best known for roles in Devil Wears Prada, Iron Man 3, and the ABC hit series A Million Little Things, also my very favorite show of all time. She speaks on being an outsider, overcoming failure and mental fitness, and living with authenticity. 10 years into her career, Stephanie suffered from imposter syndrome, which pushed her to address her mindset and develop a personal playbook as a daily practice of mental fitness. Her book, Selfish, which by the way is phenomenal, step into a journey of self-discovery to revive confidence, joy, and meaning, offers a template for others to create their own unique playbook to cope, grow, and elevate their mindset. As a part of her commitment to mental health, she has donated half of her proceeds from Selfish to the mental health organization Given Hour and is actively working on launching the Selfish app later this year. Stephanie, welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm excited to speak with you, Mark. It's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. We are super excited to have you here. I think you offer a viewpoint that is very unique, and I love what you're doing as well. Selfish is a book that I've begun myself and looked into and read about half of it so far, taken my time with it, but it is such a spot-on, awesome self-help book. I don't know if that's quite the right category, but it's such a unique book that I really want my listeners to think about going out and getting. Tell us more a little bit about Selfish and sort of how that came about.
I like that you use the word self-help because it's a little bit of a dirty word. Mm-hmm. I think, but sure, it is self-help because it's an interactive workbook for you to discover more about yourself.
Love it.
And it's 8 self-reflective exercises. I didn't make them up. Actually, one of them I made up, the one about joy, but they're versions of exercises that I've done through the years that were given to me by therapists or coaches. But all exercises that really I've benefited from and that sort of brought me aha moments and helped me be more at ease with who I was and have more clarity and have more confidence in hard moments. And the reason they were put into a book was because, like you mentioned earlier, I created when I went through my journey of well-being, whether it be meeting with therapists or reading books or listening to podcasts, I found so much content that was helpful. But my challenge was, how do I remember it? And so I created what I call a playbook, which is a digital place on my phone. And every morning I hit play on it. There's my soundtrack, the music. So it's a little slideshow. And after 3 minutes, it's sort of a great reminder and start of the day, to get in a good mood, to remind myself of what helps me respond, of what inspires me. It's I like to say, how we have iTunes or Spotify for music.
Yep.
We can curate our own playlists for different moments in our lives. This is curate different playbooks for different moments of your life. So you could have a joy playbook. You could have a playbook for every day. You could have a playbook before you go on set or before you take an exam.
I love it. What a great idea. What a fantastic idea.
And but when I explained this concept, people always were like, what do you put in your playbook? And so I looked at my own and I realized a lot of this content came from these exercises. So the workbook is meant for people to have a sort of foundation, a starter point. Every answer to each exercise that you, not answer, but insight that
Mhm.
you discover, then you will put in your playbook. So at the end, you'll have sort of a great little foundation there.
I love it. I love it. It's I think that there's so many levels to it. I've always said, honestly, my whole career, I've always said selfish gets such a bad name, like when people have to take care of themselves, sometimes there's that fine line of like, are you being selfish? Like there's that negative connotation. And yet, we're supposed to go to the doctor every year. We're supposed to get our eyes checked. We're supposed to get our teeth cleaned. Those self-care habits are really a part of not only being a human being, but certainly a part of trying to keep one's mental health stable, right? And I talk to students about that all the time, the importance of kind of taking care. I'm curious, when you hear the phrase self-care, what does that mean to you?
Well, first the word, the title selfish. I just want to give a little shout out to
Yeah,
Little Big
please.
Brands
Yeah,
because they're a local branding company and they're the ones who came up with the title amongst others. They had different names. And when I saw it, it jumped at me because it was so counterintuitive,
I love it. Yeah.
but also because it had the word self in it,
Yep.
and because it really I could then play with it about and say that it's about taking time for yourself every day. Self-care to me means anything that is going to serve me well. So it could be physical things, it could be things for my mind, it could be things, spiritual things, uh, creative. It's just things that fuel or build energy within,
Mhm.
refuels me, right? Um, and I don't know if you're asking what specific practices I do, but I think that's almost irrelevant because we are so different, every one of us.
Absolutely.
So it's really, there are so many things out there that you can do for your own self-care. And it's about finding what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
think that's the important part, is finding what works for you, because what works for you may not work for me. What works for me may not work for you. And yet, working with students all the time, I hear about so many different ways students chill out or cool off or kind of clear their head. And, there's certainly themes. There's certainly themes that kids
yeah,
sort of go to. But it's really interesting how young people don't see how important that is. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think maybe what would be helpful is instead of saying self-care as a practice, is what gives you this feeling after you do it that you're like, okay, I feel like myself. I
yeah.
feel this sort of opened, open feeling as opposed to constricted. And there we all have these two things. For me, I feel like I could go, there's a spectrum. I can be judgmental, angry, pessimistic, all the, and at the other side of the spectrum, I find myself sometimes trusting and just like centered, grounded. So
Mhm.
what are those things that help you shift on the spectrum?
I love that. I love that because it really takes away the focus on how you get there and just sort of the goal, right? The goal.
Yeah.
We all like being there. We all like that feeling. And there are so many different paths to getting there. Um, you
And
know,
realizing that you do have agency to get there, that you're not necessarily, that the getting there is not external, that we can play a role if we have a little bit of awareness. Um, and I think that's the key, is everything starts with developing self-awareness, understanding what our triggers are, or the moments where we lose sort of this groundedness,
right.
and then discovering what helps us in those moments.
Right, right, right. And, in comparison to young people, I mean, obviously, you and I have a few years over college kids.
Yeah.
So we've learned that. We've made our mistakes and we've stumbled and we've kind of figured out what does help us.
Mhm.
But I like the word you use, agency. Like we have agency over making those decisions to say, I'm going to just throw some earbuds in and I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to
Yeah.
listen to, my playlist, let's say. Uh,
Yeah.
and that will help me, sort of shift and be in a better zone because as you said, we all get pessimistic, we all get negative, we all get, and that no one likes that, right? Like we're not a good family member, we're not a good, individual when we feel that.
Yeah, but I'm so happy you remind me that our audience is young people because going back a few decades when I was in college,
Mhm.
I had a really tough, I came from France and so came to America. I had huge culture shock. Um, didn't know the language well, didn't know humor. And I felt really isolated and didn't have a sense of belonging. So much so that I actually cried every day.
Hmm.
But I want to say sometimes we want to be in that space. Like I remember being in my room and listening intentionally to sad music because and so there's a fine balance, right, about staying in that space too long and then it's not serving you well, but also you don't want to be like, I'm not feeling this and not taking the time to acknowledge what you're going through.
Right, right.
And I like the word coexisting. Like
Mhm.
we could have sadness, we could have pain, suffering, and find within that, make space for small moments of joy or
Yeah.
taking a walk or listening to, I'm gonna try to listen to to music that makes me feel good right now. Maybe the music that reconnects me to a really cool memory that I
Mhm.
had.
Mhm.
Um, so I love this idea of taking time when we don't feel good, but making space for light as we are in that space.
Yeah, I mean, as a human being, we're going to feel both, right? And we're going to be, I mean, I think what you just said about how you felt when you moved to the States and started school, so many college students are feeling right now. Many of them have started their semesters, and many conversations have been had even by myself in the last few weeks with new freshmen where, they're wondering, did I make the right choice? I'm not making friends right now. I mean, what is this all about? And we live in a bit of a world where, especially young people, think things happen like instantly.
Mhm.
I'm going to make friends. I'm going to learn the new culture. I'm going to learn the new language. Everything's going to happen in one day when it really doesn't. It takes time. And we have to show ourselves a little bit of grace to say, hey, it's going to take me some time, right? And how I get through that is really what you said earlier, which is, finding some opportunities, finding some decisions to take some breaks, and maybe not sit in my room and cry all day. Maybe I need to be able to get out and take some walks and give it a chance because, to me, college is not for everybody, but it is an amazing journey for a lot of young people these days. So,
Yeah. And I mean, I'll share a little bit of my story
please,
because
yeah.
it's also not linear for a lot of us. And I came to the College of William Mary to play golf. I was playing on the golf team. On paper, all that is like, wow, how wonderful. And every day I was completely lost. I remember going in the hallways and people being like, "Hey, what's up?" and looking up to the ceiling and being completely confused by what they were saying. And then if I saw people a second time, they'd say again, "Hey." And I
Mhm.
would say nothing because I already saw you. Why should I say hey again? That's not part of my culture. And then people are like, "You're so rude. Why don't you say hey?" And I was like, "What?" um, but and so I decided to go back. I also at home, I had an older brother who struggled through heroin addiction,
Hmm.
and that wasn't something that I wanted. He was not using anymore, but he was sick. He had hepatitis C and cirrhosis. And I didn't want to share this home trouble with anyone because I
Sure.
felt that that was going to make me be different. And I
Mhm.
was already
Mhm.
feeling different
Mhm.
enough. And to me, it seemed like everybody was all happy and had it all figured out. And they all went to dinner all together in a crowd. And there I was with my tray by myself.
Oh.
But eventually, I decided to go back home for a sophomore year abroad.
Mhm.
So I went back to Paris as a year abroad, and kind of felt like a loser for doing that.
Hmm.
But I ended up My brother passed away when I was home that year, so it
Oh,
was
I'm so
super.
sorry.
Thank you, but it was actually amazing because I was there with him.
Mm-hmm.
I also met my now husband,
Mm-hmm.
who was American in Paris,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually went back my junior year to William and Mary and graduated. So it wasn't like, and played golf again and had the best experience. So there's no one way to do things. I just want to say for anyone who's listening to this, young people, like listen to your intuition. Find it takes time to find your tribe. And
Yeah.
maybe it's not a big tribe. Maybe it's
Right.
just one or two people. But yes, like you said, have grace for yourself. Like it takes time.
So important. I appreciate you sharing all that. And it's funny how life kind of works out. Like you have the twists and the turns, and
Mhm.
you go back home for some nurturing, and you end up meeting your husband back home, which is wonderful. It's funny too. I had the thought when you were talking about the crowd going and you feeling sort of alone. I had the thought of like that's magnified now because of social media.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have young people that not only are feeling that, but they're also looking at their phone, and it seems like everybody is, going to parties every night and having a grand old time. And
Yeah.
I'm the only one who's not. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so I think your words are so important, Stephanie. And I think that concept of, number one, statistically speaking, they're not the only one. There are a lot of kids struggling out there. And number two, realizing, hey, this is going to take time, right? It's not something that can be rushed. And there are thousands of ways to kind of make this work and figure their journey out. And so I appreciate you sharing yours. I think everyone's got a story and how they got there, right?
Yeah. And what you just said about social media and basically seeing people's highlight reels all
Yeah,
day
right,
long
right.
also makes me think, I'm an actress, so I
Mhm.
actually have a highlight reel that I
Uh-huh.
send to, director, or my agent sends to directors, and it has when I look at it, even me, I'm like, holy crap, look at all
You're
this.
impressed by yourself.
Yeah, by the work, I'm like, that's a lot. And I say when that is actually 5% of the work that I do, because
Mhm.
the other 95% is the behind the scenes. It's me in my living room doing an audition tape with my husband and not hearing back. It's being rejected. It's not having work since, last November. I
Mhm.
have no job.
Mhm.
And it's oftentimes feeling like I'm going from rejection to rejection and failure to failure. And so remembering that all of us, our highlight reels is very different
Yeah.
from the behind the scenes, from the reality. And there's something that helped me for me in the moments in my career when the dry moments. I heard a coach, I think it was a football coach, say, treat moments in life like setbacks as the athlete treats the off season.
Mm.
So they're not playing, they're not in the season, but what are they doing? They're working on their skills.
Mhm.
They're practicing, they're becoming stronger.
Mhm.
And I remember when I heard that, I was like, oh, this is so great. I'm in my off
Off
season
season, right?
right now. What can I do to better myself?
Yeah.
And then it's like, maybe I don't know what, but what do I want to feel? What do I want? What am I want to work towards? And then you just take those steps to find somebody who can help you. Maybe it's just taking on a new hobby, learning something new. That's gonna. I think that's a very helpful thing to
I love
also
that.
keep moving and not just stay stuck.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I have to say, I mean, I use the word authentic in my introduction of you. You're a very authentic person. I can tell when we talk, you're very honest. You're able to touch on things that, a lot of people will just hide, So it's to me, I think that one of the refreshing parts of that, Stephanie, is that we all have these sides to us. We all have these difficulties that we struggle with. And just because young people don't necessarily see it, let's say through social media or through, TVs and movies, it doesn't mean that these people aren't human beings and these people don't have very, very similar struggles, right? So I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. I just find it, I find your story fascinating and really helpful to hear about. I'm curious, when it comes to the different things that have helped you along the way in your journey, get to authenticity and get to feeling so grounded. Lots of times people will reference, mind body, experiences or what different wellness experiences, therapy, different types of assistance, maybe alternative assistance. I guess I'm wondering, what have you found to be helpful in your own journey?
Well, first, what pushed me to start my own journey was really a moment in my life where I felt so lousy, and it was related to my career, and it was the opposite of authenticity. I was so worried about what other people were going to think
Okay.
what of my work not being good enough, that it impacted not only my performance, but it impacted my relationships and my well-being. So that's kind of it was so bad. I felt so bad. My self-value was all tied into my career and how successful, I was or not. So that's what pushed me to seek and search. And I think the beginning, it's weird. I picked up this book by Deepak Chopra, and I would have been embarrassed if anyone had seen me do that, because I was so like, self-help, what is that? I'm an athlete. I know how to compete. I'm in charge. Like I know how to uh, basically take care of my mental game. But there is a book by Deepak Chopra, and it was called The Seven Spiritual Laws of spiritual laws of success, but it was spiritual laws. There was something that grabbed me, and when I read it, the way he spoke really hit home with me. And so and that's just me, but I think it's almost like dating. When you say find a therapist is like dating, you have to find your language. This spoke to me for the time that I was at, and he spoke a lot about concepts that I had not really experienced, like gratitude and trust and surrendering and giving, but just being really conscious about doing these things every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I made myself flashcards every day before I went on this set, and I focused on giving on to everyone, and it was like maybe a compliment, maybe a smile, maybe just.
Good for you.
And
Yeah.
as I was doing that, it got me out of my own head,
Mm-hmm.
first of all. And then I started noticing other people on set they were doing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are superstars. That's why you're super, from the actual movie stars to the people in the crew. And that made me feel more connected to others. And that was sort of the beginning for me. And so then I started a gratitude practice, which I have to this day. I use a 5-minute journal, and
Nice.
it's every morning finding 3 things that I'm grateful for. And even when we are not having good times in our life, you actually realize, you can find things to be grateful for. Even there's another practice that I learned later, is when something bad happens. My husband had a health scare, and we were like, okay, what can we find 3 things to be grateful about this? And we did. And all of a sudden it shifted our perspective from, why is this happening? We don't want this to happen, to, okay, let's take this, let's shift our perspective. So you asked me, yeah, and then self-discovery came after that, which was journaling with specific questions to understand more of what filled my heart, what kind of life I wanted to live, what being authentic meant in the first place. If you had told me that before, I would have been like, I have no idea. And turns out a big part of being authentic for me is embracing not having it figured out, and
Mm-hmm.
being okay with um, all the vulnerability. That was really hard. It's not an easy thing to be vulnerable, and it's also not doesn't mean that you're going to talk to everybody and just like
Mm-hmm.
empty your dirty laundry to everyone or whatnot. But just even as a student, having the courage to raise your hand and say, I don't understand this. Or if somebody tells a joke and you don't understand, be like, I don't get it.
Right, right.
Like, you can practice being authentic by doing things that are a little uncomfortable, like being a little vulnerable, little bit every day.
I love that you use that word practice because it really is a skill that you have to work at developing. And I'm going to repeat something you mentioned because I feel like it should be on a t-shirt, embracing not having it figured out, like being okay with that. Because the bottom line is none of us have it figured out. We all walk around like we do, right? And I think that piece for so many people causes a lot of inner angst, so being able to get to that place where you could sort of laugh at yourself a little bit and realize, hey, if I answer a question wrong, I still tried. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's an attempt there. And hey, maybe it was funny, maybe the answer was funny, but I still tried, right? So like not taking life super seriously and realizing that part of life, I would say a big part of life, is learning along the way, and recognizing, hey, we weren't born knowing how to tie our shoes or how to
Mhm.
brush our teeth or how to comb our hair. We had to learn all of those things. So why would this stuff be any different, you know?
Yes. And also, we'd be insufferable if we had it all figured out.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it would be definitely hard to be around. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. I think it's for especially for young people, there is that notion of like, for some reason, a lot of young people think they should have it all figured out,
Mm.
And I think as you get further into adulthood, you really start to recognize, wow, not only don't I, but most people don't. Most people are on this journey.
Yeah, and that's, I would even say that's kind of the beauty of life,
I
because
agree.
even I think if you're young, well, maybe not, it's hard, but like from where we are, if I look back, I'm like, what? I would have never imagined this. I studied business. I never took an acting class until I was 29 years
Oh
old.
wow, wow. Hmm.
Uh, you don't know what life is going to throw at you, and you also don't know what the cliche of one door closes, another
Right,
opens. I
right.
mean, I remember after college, I thought I was need to go into sports marketing.
Hmm.
So I interned at this big company. It was called Advantage International. Now it's something else, but it was one of the big
Uh-huh.
three. And I entered on a golf tournament in New Rochelle, had the best internship. I got along well with people, and I was convinced it was going to lead to a job.
Hmm.
And then the big boss called me into his office and he said, you were so great. We love you, blah, 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 blah. I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to give you the job. And he said, you're going to be bored and I won't be able to, give you something better soon
Mm.
enough. Who knows if that was true or not? What I heard was, we didn't like you. You don't belong here.
Hmm.
And I'm just making things up to make you think fine about yourself or a little better about yourself. I was devastated.
I bet. Yeah, of course.
And and then I also felt like, how could I be so wrong thinking in my judgment, thinking I was going to get this job? And
Mm-hmm.
but you know what? That job led me to do a marketing job at Chanel. And then that led me to become a model at 26, which I never would have even wanted to do, but somehow that happened. And then that led me to a theater class at 29, to
Mm.
discovering my passion in life.
That's
So
awesome.
life is so weird.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's never
awesome.
too late to try something.
That's a good segue to this, and I have to say one of the things that I've so enjoyed about this, in making some lists that go on here, is there's a part in here that talks about who you admire and why.
Yeah.
And one of the people that came out for me was similar to you. I have my own story. Um, I didn't know what I wanted to do until I was a junior in college and felt lost. I was a communications major. I hated it. And I went to see my advisor. And my advisor, who was a sweetheart, turned out to be a family therapist. I thought I'd have a 20-minute meeting. We had a 3-hour meeting. She handed me her textbook of her class. I went home. I'm not a reader, but I went home and I read that thing cover to cover. Stayed up all night reading the book. And then I came to her class the next day and I said, give me more, like so it was my own discovery of my passion and a recognition of like, there was something about this topic that moved me. And I really, really enjoyed it and wanted to know lots more. So, I think that for young people, you can't really plan that. I think a lot of young people, I had someone say to me yesterday, who's a senior in high school, 17 years old, says to me, I don't really know what I want to do. I'm like, that's funny. You know what? I didn't either at 17, you know. But I think for a lot of young people, they think they're supposed to. And no one ever really says to them, hey, here's my story. I didn't discover this till I was 29. I didn't discover this till I was 25. I didn't, So to take that pressure off, I think is
Yes.
amazing. And I
I
want
think
to
a
say
lot of
something.
parents think, maybe
Oh,
push
goodness.
also like this is what you hear that word success. I use it because I want to redefine success. Like success is finding your own life, is following your own path, and is having also the awareness when you hear your advisor say something and you realize, oh, this is moving me to
Right,
say, I want more. Let me explore this.
right,
That takes courage because, to say, okay, as a junior, I'm going to shift from communications to
right,
now psychology. That takes
right.
courage to
It
change.
did. It did. And I think that awareness is such a big part of that to understand what passion is, which I think a lot of young people aren't even really clear on. When you think about, gee, this is something I would consider doing for the next 50 years, and I'd enjoy a lot of it. There's got to be some kind of passion involved in that. So
Yeah.
Stephanie, let me shift back to this for a minute because I want to give our listeners an opportunity to hear about this. Tell us a little bit more about Selfish and kind of you had mentioned before that there's an app coming out, and I just want to hear more about sort of where this has come from and where this is headed.
Okay. So, in a nutshell, Selfish is a playbook for everything that elevates your mindset.
Awesome,
The
awesome.
workbook, there's a workbook, the actual book that is an interactive workbook that you answer questions to, will help you sort of discover content to put in your own playbook. And this content is meant you will discover, I'm not telling you what to put in there, but it will be, you will arrive to stuff that revives confidence, joy, and meaning,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Love it, love it.
And then the app, this is the only reason I'm doing this is because I needed this tool. It doesn't exist anywhere. We have access to so much great information,
Hmm.
whether through you, books, podcasts, even social media. We can have, accounts that inspire us. I'm sure a lot of your listeners take screenshots on their phones of things that
Absolutely.
inspire them.
Yep.
I did the same. The problem was I never looked at those screenshots again, or they were scattered. So if you go to selfishplaybook.com, you can download the beta version of the app. I use it every day. It's in beta because we're still improving it. But it's basically imagine your Instagram grid, but
Hmm.
it's private, it's for you. And in there, you're going to put all the stuff that inspires you, the wisdom that you come across,
I love it.
the things you're grateful for, your goals, whatever it is you're working on. And
Yeah.
you can create different grids or different playbooks. Some for, for me personally, I have one that is before I go on set, before.
Mhm.
So I know my son, he's like, you can have one before an interview, a job interview, or before a test. I have one that's just about nature inspiration. Although I love to go in nature, and so I take pictures and I put them in there. And if I watch it, you can hit play, and then it plays as a slideshow with music.
I love it. That's
So
great.
it mixes, and there's science that shows that when we mix meaningful words, images, and music, we create an emotional experience, and that boosts our mood. It helps us
Absolutely.
learn and remember. So you could have one with your takeaways from Mark's session in there, and just watching them. What I try to do is watch it every morning before I go on social media, before I look at the news, before all the noise comes and hijacks my mindset and gets me in reactive mode. I take just 3 minutes to remind me of the stuff that serves me well.
Such a healthy habit. And, so often do we do things mindlessly, like we pick our phone up right when we get up and we look through our emails or social media. This is such a healthy habit to insert. And I love the concept. It's simple. It's simple. It's a tool. It's with you all the time, and you can grow it. You can grow it into multiple,
Yes.
I
And you
love
can archive things that you're
Right.
like, I don't do this anymore. You archive it.
I
And
love
yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. So let me ask you, we had talked a bit offline about, so the concept of normalize it forward is obviously we want to continue to have these conversations and be talking openly about the topics of mental health and wellness. And typically I ask for a person to be nominated, an individual, a coworker, friend, or relative to be nominated. And you were kind enough to nominate, I'm going to screw her name up, forgive me, Dr. Trina.
Why you?
By you, thank you. From Given Hour. Tell us a little bit about Dr. Trina.
So Trina is the CEO of Give an Hour, which is a mental health organization that I came to know through a million little things. But what they do is they have a network of mental health professionals who give an hour of their time to people who need mental health resources. They also work with population who've suffered from human-made trauma. So they will go, they work a lot with veterans. So they will go to a base that they're working with and assess the needs of the population, and then give them education and skills, and then also train peer support groups in those populations, so that then when the work is done, there's community, and somebody who's maybe suffered from human-made trauma and feels now that they're in a place where they can help somebody else can do that. I think a lot of us, we need mental health professionals, but we can also benefit from shared experience.
Absolutely.
Human to human.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great organization. Thank you so much for nominating her. I look forward to reaching out and getting her on the show. And I just want to thank you. Thank you for your time, your energy. I know you're busy right now, and I appreciate just making some space and talking to our listeners about all of these topics. They're so important. For those of you that are looking to get an awesome read, please get out there and get Selfish. It's a fantastic book. I've learned a lot myself just from the half of what I've done in it so far. So get out there and take a look, guys. And again, Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for all you do, and thanks for having me, Mark.
Appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
That's all for this episode of Normalize It Forward. May this conversation serve as a reminder that you are never alone in facing your mental health struggles. There are always people who can help. To dive even deeper into our journey of normalizing one of the biggest issues young people face, check out more episodes of the show at youareheard.com. It's UAREHEARD.com. Continue gaining access to the right tools, the best resources, and the most insightful advice to achieve positivity, mindfulness, and genuine happiness.